Today we get to make our very own solar system. So you're gonna design a galaxy, and you are gonna start by drawing a bunch of circles. Of course, we're gonna turn these circles into some beautiful spheres to represent our planets. I have a bunch of lids of different sizes. And I'm just tracing them. I'm planning where each planet should be and what size they should be. Some planets are small, some are big, so they come in different sizes. And also when they are farther away, they appear what? Smaller, of course. And then you can also add whatever rings you want around your planets. Another option to help your younger ones stay in the lines for our younger students is to outline with black glue first, and this is going to help keep the oil pastels in the circle and not get out of the circle. It creates a little texture, gives a more of a visual, so just carefully slowly outline. So I'm barely squeezing. It's very light. You're gonna want a paper towel or tissue or something to keep the tip of your glue clean. And I'm I'm touching the paper and using it like a pen. So it's kind of like a little paint pen or a big paint pen. And you need to go very slowly. Do not touch it. It will smear. If it accidentally smears though, it's okay, we'll fix it. Turning the paper to work with it. And voila. And you do that to every single planet. And now it's time to take our oil pastels and turn these circles into spheres. While you're coloring, you need to think about where the sun in your picture is, and you want to make sure that each sphere is lighter on the side that's facing the sun. The outside of this sphere is colored with a dark blue, and then I took a lighter blue and I'm coloring in a circle in curved direction, and I'm making sure that the outside, the farthest away from the sun is darker, and the closer side of the sphere is lighter. So I have white, helps blend, and then you can also take a blending stick like you see here, and you can use it to color, kind of blend in all these colors to make it look like it's painted, right? But if you don't have one of these blender sticks, Q-tips work, your finger works. You can also take a paper towel and wrap it around the end of your finger and blend your colors. But notice how I'm going in a circle. I'm keeping my blending also in a curved line. So you want to make sure that you don't just go back and forth in straight lines and run that beautiful sphere shape. And then after you blend, if you feel like you need to add a little bit more highlight to it and blend some more, it's a process. Lots of layers, lots of patience to get the look that you desire. And add a little bit more shading. I'm adding a little bit dark blue on this side because it is the side that is not facing the sun. So on this planet, I'm coloring some spots of yellow in it, and then I am coming in with my blue, coloring in some blue and overlapping it with the yellow because yellow and blue make green. That's right. Some lighter blue. So what planet could I be making? Looks like Earth to me. So I'm also using my white. White will be used a lot probably to blend and add highlights. So I'm adding white along the edges to get it a more kind of a blurred look, a little more blended look, right? I'm using my blending tool to blend some of the oil pastels together. And I want to make sure, remember, the side that's farthest away from the sun would be nighttime, right? So we need to make that side a little bit darker. So I'm not using black for all of my shadows. I can just use the dark blue. If you use black, only use a tiny, tiny bit because it will take over the whole color of your planet. So try to avoid using black, although I will use some black in some of my planets, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So I wanted to brighten it up, and I added some more yellow. This one, I'm gonna give it kind of a stripy little effect. So I'm just going back and forth with different colors and adding some lines, making sure they're going in one direction. So you can use whatever combination of colors you want, but also make sure you think about what color will these two colors make if they're blended together. So I'm sticking with some neutrals and some oranges on this one. And my white is a little dirty from the other planet, so I want to make sure I clean it off so I don't mix the blues in this one. I don't want all my planets to be blue. You got to have a little variety in this. So my white is kind of blending some of these together. And you notice I'm still going back and forth in a line with my white because I want it to have some stripes in it. Now I know it doesn't look quite sphere-like yet. Don't worry, we're going to get to that. And I will start coloring the edges in a curved motion in just a moment. Now that I have the color of my planets set the way I want to, I'm going to take the gray. I'm adding just slightly curved lines. And I am shading in the side farthest away from my sun with the gray to get a little bit darker. I'm going to add, oh, look at that tiny bit of black, guys. I did not add a lot of black. And my blending tool is going to blend out all the gray and the black to create that shaded side of my sphere. I'm using my white on the side that's facing the sun, adding some of that color back in that got covered up. And my blending tool is dirty. It's got blue on it. I'm gonna need to clean it off. Okay, and now I am kind of blending the lighter side to it. And I accidentally got blue on it, but I kind of like it. So I'm gonna go back in with a little bit more blue on my bottom and the side, like somewhere there would be a little shadow. It's a little bit darker down there, right? So, but oops, not that dark. I added some white back. All right, now I have this planet. I'm kind of excited about this planet. This one, I wasn't sure how it was gonna turn out, and it ended up being one of my favorite ones. So I have like an orangish red here, and I am gonna color a lot of it in with this. And then I am going to make this one a little bit darker on the other side than the other one. So this one I am going to use a little bit more black, but you have to be careful, guys. I'm going to show you how it takes over your planet. This one just happened to turn out really good. And of course, I'm blending it all. So I'm making sure that it transitions from one color to the next, and that all that white paper is covered up. So we want it to look like it's been painted, right? You do not want to see what color paper is underneath your planet. It should look like a sphere. And I blended it. Now I need to add a little bit of highlight. So I added some white and just a little bit of yellow to brighten it up for the side that's facing the sun. This tiny little planet I kept pretty simple. I used a darker and a lighter yellow, and the white for the highlighted sign, and the blue for my shadow, but I used the tiniest bit of dark blue because it's a tiny planet and the yellow is a really light color, and I didn't want the blue to take over. So I just blended them in and made sure that my highlights showed, trying to stay as neat as possible in this little guy. And add a little orange to kind of brighten it up, and that was it. So this one, I had fun with using some greens. I just used a bunch of different shades of green. I don't want it just one flat color, right? So I used different shades of green, blended it together, made sure I added my white in the center for highlights. Got my darker side here, made sure that I'm using my blending tool carefully so I don't get out of my lines, and I'm coloring in circles and using my yellow for highlights and all that good stuff. So added the little swirls there, and then the ring around there, I used dark green and a gray, and I just kept adding colors until I got the effect I liked. And I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I think it looks really nice. Make sure that when you're using that blending tool that you clean it off if you need to. so that you don't mix your other colors and smear, also staying in the line so you don't smear outside the lines. Now I'm ready to color my sun. I made sure my yellow was nice and clean so I didn't get a different color when I was coloring with it. I just did spots of yellow, different spots and areas of orange, got some red in there. I don't want to completely cover up my yellow, so make sure you leave some of those spots yellow. I'm blending some of my colors together with my yellow. So I'm going over all my orange and my red with my yellow. So I actually use my yellow a lot on this one. And my oil pastel broke. That happens sometimes, guys. You just keep going. That little tiny piece works just fine, and I am not wasting it. So color, color, color until everything's all filled in, and make sure that you blend. Blending is really, really important on this. On the sun, I'm actually going outside of the lines on purpose. I want just a little bit on the outside of the line because that is a really, really hot sun and I want it to show, right? So I just went, if you look really closely, you can see how I went outside the lines. This next planet I kept very, very light. So I used my golden color there, my gray, but just a tiny bit. I used a lot of white on this and I made sure that the whitest side was facing the sun. Don't forget about that. And I used a tiny bit, tiny bit of gray. I'm sorry, a tiny bit of black, and I used my Q-tip to blend it out because my little blender tool was getting a little too messy there and I didn't want to mess up my perfect white color here. So I'm using a Q-tip to blend, and look, it works perfectly. I loved it. And again, this tiny little planet I am keeping super simple. So I'm taking orange all the way around the edges, adding the tiniest bit of black on the one side, and I'm adding white all throughout it using my Q-tip to blend. The Q-tip spread all the color out. I'm going back over it with my orange and making sure the side that's facing the sun is lighter than the other side, and the center is lighter as well to give it that sphere shape. And my very last planet, yay, I am coloring it purple and red. So I wanted a different color. I felt like I had enough orange and blue, and I'm blending it with white and my little blender, and voila, here it is. And now I am ready to paint. So I am going to take gray watercolor paint, and I'm just going to paint, actually on the bottle, it's actually black, but of course it looks gray on the paper. I'm painting my entire paper. So I definitely would suggest putting a messy mat underneath your paper. Miss Fortenberry did not put a messy mat, and guess what? My desk was really messy. Anyways, paint your whole paper with the gray watercolor paint. And don't take forever. You want it to stay wet. So this is kind of a quick process. Go around your planets. If you get a little bit too much paint on your planets, you shouldn't worry too much because it's not going to stick to the oil pastels. But you can use a paper towel to blot up any excess paint that might be on top of your planets. Okay, so now that everything is painted, I'm double check, make sure everything was painted really nice. Wash your paintbrush, please, because we are switching colors. So now you're going to dip it in your purple paint, and you are going to dab the purple on. So do not brush back and forth. You're going up and down, just dab, dab, dab. Wash your paintbrush again before you stick it back in your paint, because now it's mixed with that gray paint that's on your paper. Every time you want to re-dip your paint into the purple paint, you need to wash your paintbrush, because we do not want to dilute the purple with the gray that gets on your paintbrush. So dab, dab, dab all over. You want splotches, okay? So you're putting splotches of purple all over the gray. This is gonna give it more of a kind of a galaxy solar system, really cool dark purpley kind of color. So just keep doing that till you have everything covered. Now this next part is really cool. I'm going to take salt, and I'm going to just take a pinch, that's all you need, and sprinkle it all over my paper. So it doesn't take a handful. There's not a lot. You just take a few pinches of salt and you season that paper up real good, right? So this is going to create a really cool effect. And you can see now that it's dry, you can see how the salt pushed the paint away and created kind of a really cool kind of starry effect on your picture. Okay, so now that my paint is dry, I am ready to add some stars and maybe some asteroids with some chalk pastels. So these get a little messy, as you can see. And if you get them out of the box, like I store them, you're gonna want a paper towel to clean it off a little bit before you start using it. All right, so I'm gonna show you on the black paper first. When you make a star in your galaxy, you're just going to make a little dot, like so. So we're gonna make a little dot with your chalk pastel, a little circle colored in, and just a little bit, like a little plus sign, just a little bit coming on the outside, and then take your finger and press it up and press it out and press it down. Okay, so there's you have a little star there. Or a tiny little plus sign, and give it a little tiny little dot in the middle. So you have a little bit of extra chalk to work with. And you're just going to smear it out, just like so. Do not do an X. So it looks like a plus sign or a cross or the little letter T. Don't do an X. Do not do this. They don't look like that in the galaxy. So just a little bitty tiny plus sign with a little dot and smear it. For the asteroid, you're gonna make a little circle and color it in about the size of your pinky. And then I'm gonna take my blue and my green, a little color just a little bit on the edge, outer edge, and a little bit of blue on one side of the outer edge. And I'm gonna take my thumb and I'm gonna smear it out like that. And then we have our asteroids, just like so. So that's stars and asteroids. So I am going to go ahead and add them to my picture. And here's the finished project. I think it turned out beautiful. Thanks guys for doing art with me today. Bye. If you like this video, please subscribe.